Hey everybody, it's Miss A and I'm here with a math video. I'm doing the review for our division test that we will be having. The first thing I want to talk about are the type of problems that we will be having. You will have some estimation division problems, and you will be getting examples, or you'll be seeing examples of all of these type. So estimation division, you'll be seeing examples of all of these types, and I'll show you how I would solve them. We're definitely going to have some word problems. Some will be pretty straightforward. There might be some multi-step word problems. You will have some mental division. That's associating division with multiplication. You will have range division. And again, we will go over all these types of problems. You will be have problems that are interpreting the remainder. So first things first, let's talk about the different strategies that we have. I'm going to go ahead and put this right here. There are 3 strategies that your children have been shown in class in which they will be able to use on the test. We also showed them manipulatives, but unfortunately manipulatives are not something they're allowed to use during testing, so that's not a strategy we can rely on. We really use that as more of a concrete to show them how the math works, but eventually they will have to be able to do it on their own. So we have partial quotients, and a partial quotient is to subtract out multiples of, and that should be multiples, not multiple, multiples of the divisor from your dividend to determine your quotient and or remainder. So here's an example. Let's say we have 76 divided by 5. All right, I would divide out multiples of my divisor, so I know that 5 times 1 is 5, and I usually use the ones that I know. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 5, most kids know that's 25, or they can figure it out, and then 5 times 10 is 50. Those are the ones that I really stick to. Now, if my number's really big, I would use multiples of that. So if my number was 1,000, I could do 5 times 100, and that would be 500. So there's an example. 76, here's my 5s tables. So I'm going to start off with 50 because 50 is less than 76 and it pulls out a big chunk. Well, that is 5 times 10. And I can do that, and then I do my subtraction here. This is my running subtraction total. Well, that's 26. Now I look 26, I've got 25 here, so that's 5 times 5. That equals 25, and I subtract that. That leaves me with 1 left over. So my remainder is 1, and my quotient, I add how many times I used my 5. That's 5 plus, or 10 plus 5, which is 15. So 76 divided by 5 is 15, remainder 1. This is how this strategy works. Now, the children will be given word problems in which they need to apply one of these strategies. Now, there are some straight computation, and I'll let you know how many of those on the test, but the majority of them are word problems. Repeated subtraction. Repeatedly subtract your divisor from your dividend to attain the quotient or the remainder. Here's an example. 23 divided by 9. I would repeatedly subtract 9, and I have to regroup here. 13 minus 9 is 4, 1 minus 0 is 1, minus 9, 14 minus 9 is 5. So my remainder is 5 because 5 is less than 9, and then I used my 9 2 times. So 23 divided by 9 is 2, remainder 5. This is another strategy. This one allows, if you don't know any of your multiplication tables, you can still have success with this one. I will tell you, though, this one takes a lot longer to write out. I used a really small number so I could get it to fit in this space so that you could see it. The next one is place value subtraction, and for us old people, that is standard long division, and this is how it looks. So 1,295 divided by 8. When I use place value, I look at each digit individually, starting with my largest value, which would be the 1 because it's in the thousands place. How many times does 8 go into 1, or how many groups of 8 can I make out of the 1? Well, that's 0. So I mark that there. And since it's 0, I don't need to do any subtraction, but I could if I needed to. I'm going to move over a place value. How many times does 8 go into 12? Well, I can make one group of 8 with 12 pieces, so that's 1. Then I multiply 1 times 8, which is 8. And then I subtract because my sister tells me don't forget to subtract. 12 minus 8 is 4. Bring down just my next digit. The mistake a lot of the kids make is they want to bring down all the digits. We only bring down one at a time. So now I have 49. How many times does 8 go into 49 without going over? I know my multiplication tables. That's 6. 6 times 8, and you think of it like this, 6 times 8 equals 48. Subtract 1, or subtract 49 from 48, which is 1. Bring down my next digit, which is 15. How many times does 8 go into 15 evenly? That's 1 time. 15 minus 8 is 7. 7 is less than that, so it's 161, remainder 7. So these are the 3 strategies that your children have been taught that they will use to solve their problems. So I just wanted to go over the strategies real quick. All right, so now let's get down to business and let's talk about the different test type questions. Pardon my voice, it is a mess today. So we do have an estimation division. Basically what that says, if there's a problem which says, give you an example, Marcus drove 193 miles. It took him 5 hours. About, and the kids will see that, it will say about how many miles per hour. Now, this is kind of short. It would be more spelled out on the test. I just want to give you an idea. So this is the type question. There's only one of these on the test, and this is how they would do it. 193 divided by 5. Now, can 5 go into 1? The answer is no. So I need to move over one place value. Can 5 go into 19 without going over? So what times 5, and this I put it, what times 5 gets me close to 19 without going over? Well, I know 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20. So that is 15. There are 2 place values here. There are 3 in my number, so I need 3 here. So I add 1 there. That's 3 place values. And I have added 1 0. That's 1 0 here. This is my low range. And this will help us with our range problem as well. This is my low range. My low range is always less than my actual dividend. So this, I do have to know my multiplication tables, and I do know 5 times 3. And if I look at it like this, I'm thinking like place value division. What times 5 gets me close to 19? Well, that would be 3, which is 15. And now my high range is just 1 digit up. So that would be 4. It's still 0 because I have to have 3 place values. 5 times 4 is 20 and 1 0. This is my high range. And your high range is always bigger than your dividend. So for the range part, if it asks for the range, I would look at the 2 numbers I multiplied times 5 and say my range is between 30 and 40. That's what I would do if I have a range question. And there is one range question. So there's one of these and one of these. Now for my estimation division, what I do at this point is I take my low range and I subtract it from my dividend. 193 minus 50. And then I take my high range and subtract my dividend from my high range. 200 minus 193. Whichever one is smaller is your about answer. So that's 3 minus 0 is 3. 5 minus 9, 9 minus 5 is 4. So this is 43. I have to regroup here. 10 minus 3 is 7. I borrowed one from here. There wasn't anything to borrow, so that would be a 10 originally, but then I had to borrow from there, so that's 9. 9 minus 9 is 0, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Since 7 is this answer and 43 is this answer, 200 is closer, so my about answer would be about 40 because it is closer to the actual answer. So there's one estimation, and that's how you solve the estimation. So estimation involves finding the range and then doing subtraction. The range just tells me between what two quotients will my answer fall. What this says to me is that the answer is somewhere between 30 and 40. And that's what the range is. So you have one estimation and one range. Now, word problems. On the test, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 word problems on the test. So there are 15 total problems. 7 of them are word problems. So about half, just so you get a better idea of that. Now, we'll come back to that. Let's talk about mental division. And what mental division means. Mental division is when you think of something in terms of multiplication. So for example, if I have 560 divided by 7. Instead of saying 560 divided by 7, I'm basically mentally blocking out that right now, and I'm thinking, what times 7 equals 56? What times 7 equals 56? Well, I know my multiplication tables, and so this kind of one, you have to, it's good if you know your multiplication tables. It is possible to figure it out if you don't know it. So I know that 7 times 8 is 56. Now remember, my original dividend was 560, so I add a 0 here, and you see my mental multiplication actually led me to my quotient, which is 80. That's how we do mental division, and there are, I believe, there is one question on mental division. There is one question on mental division. So now we have a question called interpreting the remainder, and I am going to place a problem up here for us to look at. And this is what I meant by, if you're here looking at this review, you're going to get a sneak peek as to something that's similar to the test. All right, so here we have a problem. I'm going to read it out loud to you. It says the harbor master decides how many trips the ferry needs to make for 38 cars. I'm going to circle this because this is what I know. To cross the harbor, the ferry can carry 8 cars at a time. Also something I know. The harbor master writes the following equation. So the harbor master solves the problem for us. What is the best way the harbor master to interpret the remainder so that all the cars can cross the harbor on the ferry? Basically what it's saying is, interpreting the remainder tells me, what do I do with that? Do I just forget about that remainder, or do I have to increase my quotient? Now, boys and girls, I want you to think about this. If your car are one of these 6, do you just say, oh, forget about my car, I don't need it? Or do you have to think to yourself, okay, every car has to make it over, so the harbor master's going to need to make a 5th trip. And that's what we're talking about. So this is an example. So let's put it in terms of students. We go on a field trip, and this is what I know. This is what they're asking. There are 152 4th graders at our school, and we need to know how many vanfuls to get all kids on field trip. Each van holds 9 students. So the van holds 9 students, and there are 152 students. So this is what I'm going to do. The first thing I have to do is I have to solve it. 152 divided by 9. I know it's division because this test is all about division. Now I have to figure out what my answer is before I can, quote unquote, interpret the remainder. So I'm going to use partial quotients. I know 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 I know is 18. 9 times 5 is 45. These are all ones that kids should know. 9 times 10 is 90. Obviously, I'm going to start with 9 times 10. Minus 90. 2 minus 0 is 2. 15 minus 9 is 6. All right, I'm going to take out 45 because 45 is a big chunk of 62. That's 9 times 5 minus 45. I have to regroup here. 12 minus 5 is 7. 5 minus 4 is 1. All right, I can't do 18. 18 is bigger than 17, so I need to do 9. 9 times 1 equals 9 minus, and that leaves me with 8. All right, so now to get my answer, I know my remainder is 8. I have my quotient is here. 10 plus 5 is 15 plus 1 more 16. So I will need 16 vans that are 16 vans that are totally full, and then there's one van that will only have 8 kids. I have to get another van. I can't tell these 8 kids, sorry kids, you can't go. Kids can't go. That sad face, that's a no-no. We don't want that. I want all my 4th graders to be happy. So this van says, okay, you need to go up one more because we'll have to order 17 vans to take all the kids. So interpreting the remainder tells me that we need 17 vans to get all the kids to the field trip. So interpreting the remainder means, can I just forget about it, or do I need to increase my quotient by 1? And that's what they're thinking about when they're talking about interpreting the remainder. There are 2 problems that are about interpreting the remainder. Actually, I take that back. There are 3 problems. So going back to this page, looking here, interpreting the remainder, there are 3 problems. Some of which you may just look and it may ask you, okay, how many are full? And when they say how many vans are full, I would say 16. So there are 16 vans full because the quotient tells you how many are full. The remainder tells you how many are not full. If they wanted to say how many vans weren't full, there is 1 van not full. And this, if they wanted to know how many weren't full, it will always be 1 because the remainder has to be less than your divisor. So that would always be 1. So they might ask, how many are full? You would say 16. How many are not full? 1. And if you need to account for all of the kids or all of the cars or all of the boats, then you would have to increase your quotient. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about interpreting remainder. Do we need to increase our quotient? Do we need to tell how many are full, or do we need to tell how many are not full? Again, there are 3 that are like that, interpreting the remainder. All right, there are 3 multi-step word problems. And what they mean by multi-step is you have to either add or multiply first. And then you do your division. All right, so I'm going to give you another sneak peek at another sneak peek at another problem that we will see. So Kelly and her family went to the beach for a vacation. They drove 187 miles on Friday, 106 on Saturday. They drove for 7 hours. About how many miles did they drive each hour? This is a multi-step problem. What we would have to do is we would have to add how many miles they drove on Friday to how many miles they drove on Saturday, which would be 187 plus 106. Once I get that, that tells me the total number of miles driven. That's 13, regroup a 1, that's 9. So the total number of miles driven, and then I can divide it by the number of hours that they drove. Now, in the word problem, it said 7. I'm not going to show you 7 because I don't want to show you all the work, but I could say, let's say they drove for 9 hours. Now, if the question asked about how many miles they drove, I would think of my ranges. What times 9 gets me close to 29 without going over? Well, I know that's 9 times 3 because that's 27. Now remember, there are 3 place values here, so there need to be 3 place values here, which means I have to add a 0 here. And since I added a 0 here, I have to add a 0 here. My upper or high range would be 40 because that just goes up 1, and that is 360. And then to figure out which one is the about answer, I would then subtract. I would subtract 270 from 293. Which is 23. And I would subtract 360 minus 293. I have to regroup here. So 10 minus 3 is 7. 15 minus 9 is 6. So, as you can see, 23 miles are closer than 67 miles. So that's the 270. So my answer would be about 30. Now again, boys and girls, this is not the exact same problem that you have on your test, but it is how I would solve it, and it does show you multi-step. Again, when the multi-step problems, you are either adding or multiplying first, and then you're doing your division. So keep that in mind. All right, I think that is everything that should be used on the test. There are some straight computation problems, but there are many multiplication problems. I want you to look, I'm going to give you a problem to work on, a couple of problems to work on as your study guide. So I'm going to give you no's and asking. There are 86 people. And they're going on a roller coaster ride. 86 people, so roller coaster ride. $86 people on a roller coaster ride. The roller cart holds 6 people each. So one cart holds 6 people each. Here are what the questions that I'm asking. So it's going to be one question. Find the quotient. That is one question. Interpret the remainder. That's another question. How many full carts are there? That's another question. So let's work this one together. I'm going to move pretty slow because I want you to work with me. So first things first, boys and girls, we have to set up our division expression. So thinking to yourself, which number is my dividend? Which number is my divisor? Again, I will move a little bit slow because I want you to work this with me as I'm doing it. So I've got 86 and 6. Which number is my dividend? Which number is my divisor? All right, so we know that our groups are going to be our cart. So our cart will be our divisor. And 86, or the number of people that want to take this ride, is going to be our dividend. At this point, it's any strategy that you want to solve this particular problem. I am going to use, place value division. This one should be pretty easy. 86 divided by 6. How many times does 6 go into 8? Well, that is 1 time. Or how many groups of 6 can I make out of the 8? And if manipulatives are the only way you can solve it, you can do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Circle your group of 6. How many circles did you make? I made 1. That's what goes here. What do you have left over? That's what goes there. And how many were inside the group? That's what you subtract. Now I bring down my 6. That gives me 26. What times 6 gets me close to 26 without going over? Well, that's 4. Now, and if you can't do it, here you have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. You see how I didn't start writing 26 over again. I started at 8 because I already had 8 written there, and I already have one group of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many groups did I circle? 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what I put there. How many do I have left over? That's what your subtraction is. And then you can count how many are inside all the groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. But boys and girls, the cool thing about this is whatever's out on the outside is what your answer is too. So I can just count back from 26, 25, 26, 25, 24. And that gives me what's inside here. So I have 14 remainder 2 is my quotient. So that answers the first part, quotient. 14 remainder 2. Interpret the remainder. So let me look at this particular problem. This tells me I can send out 14 cars completely filled, and then I have 2 people left over. Do I tell these 2 people, hey, you can't go on your trip? Or do I tell these 2 people, we're going to send out another car? And that's what we're going to do. So having these 2 extra people is going to tell this quotient you need to go one more. So there will need to be 15 carts to take all people on the ride. That's what's interpreting the remainder, is telling me, okay, I need this many carts in order to accommodate all these people. And then the last part is how many full carts are there? Well, that's looking at my quotient and deciding what number represents what. The first number represents my full carts. The second number represents how many people are not in a full cart. So this is, there are 14 full carts. There were 14 full carts. So that's how I answer this problem, and that actually addresses a word problem. It addresses finding your quotient. It addresses interpreting the remainder, and also addresses understanding how your quotient is broke up. So again, before we finish up, you need to make sure you understand that vocabulary. Your divisor, D-I-V-I-S-O-R, is your groups. Your dividend is the number you're breaking apart. Your quotient is your full groups. And your remainder is your extra pieces. And sometimes your extra pieces say, hey, full group, you need to go one more. Or your extra pieces might say, hey, here's some extra candy you get to keep for yourself. All right, boys and girls, I hope this helps. Please make sure you look at this review for your test tomorrow. And I was glad that my voice came back and able to post it. Have a nice day, guys. Hope you like it.